Hey everyone, tonight we're taking a journey. Not just any journey, but one that traces the spine of American dreams, disappointments, and everything in between. We're talking about Route 66, the Mother Road, the main street of America. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video if you're enjoying what we do here, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us across the miles. Now, settle in. Maybe dim the lights. Let the hum of distant traffic fade into memory, because tonight we're going to let the rain fall on empty highways and listen to what the road remembers. Chapter 1: The Sound of the Road. Listen, can you hear it? That soft hiss of tires on wet asphalt, the gentle percussion of rubber meeting pavement, water spraying from treads, the steady rhythm of forward motion through the dark. It's a sound that's been part of the American consciousness for over a century now. A sound that whispers of freedom and loneliness in equal measure. There's something about the open road that speaks to us. Always has. Maybe it's in our blood, this restless need to move, to see what's beyond the next horizon. Our ancestors crossed oceans in wooden ships, traversed continents in covered wagons, and when the automobile arrived, when Henry Ford made his Model T affordable to the average American, that wanderlust found a new expression. The Ford Model T changed everything. Introduced in 1908, it was designed as a car for the great multitude, sturdy and affordable enough that by the 1920s, millions of Americans owned one. Suddenly, the country wasn't just connected by rail lines anymore. It was connected by the individual choices of millions of drivers, each one charting their own course across the landscape. But there was a problem. The roads were terrible. Before federal intervention, most roads were little more than trails, muddy when it rained and dusty the rest of the time. Any long trip required patience, ingenuity, tire patching equipment, tools, spare parts, and emergency food and fuel. You didn't just drive somewhere, you survived the journey. The pressure built through the 1910s. Farmers needed roads to get their crops to market. The post office needed roads for rural free delivery. And all those new car owners needed roads that wouldn't shake their vehicles apart. The Good Roads movement emerged, advocating for paved roads to connect urban and rural areas and create equitable transportation access. Finally, in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Aid Road Act. Wilson was an ardent advocate, making good roads part of his party platform. The happiness, comfort, and prosperity of rural life and the development of the city are alike conserved by the construction of public highways. But the 1916 Act wasn't enough. World War I disrupted everything. Roads deteriorated under the unexpected weight of military trucks when railways couldn't handle the shipping demands. It wasn't until the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1921 that the foundation for a true national highway system was laid. This act required each state to designate a system of highways and provided federal funding for their construction and maintenance. The 1921 Act was poetry written in asphalt and concrete. It was the federal government saying, "We will help you move. We will help you connect. We will help you reach across this vast country and touch the other side." And Americans responded. Car sales increased from around 2 million units in 1921 to over 5 million by 1929. Vehicle registrations rose from 10.5 million in 1920 to 26.7 million in 1929. The automobile wasn't a luxury anymore. It was becoming a necessity, a way of life. Can you hear it? The tires on wet asphalt? That's the sound of a nation discovering what it meant to be free. Free to leave, free to arrive, free to choose the road instead of the rails. But freedom is never simple. It's never just one thing. Because alongside that exhilaration, alongside the wind in your hair and the endless horizon ahead, there was also loneliness, the isolation of the open road, the small towns you passed through but never really knew, the strangers in diners who you'd never see again, the motel rooms where you were just another anonymous traveler, here one night and gone the next. The automobile promised freedom from the shackles of the railway timetable, according to automotive advocate Henry B. Joy in 1917. You were your own station master, engineer, and porter, but with that freedom came the weight of your own decisions, the responsibility of navigation, the solitude of self-reliance. The American road trip became a uniquely American contradiction. It was communal and isolating. It was about escape and discovery. It was about leaving home and somehow always searching for a way back. And into this landscape of possibility and paradox, Route 66 was born. Listen again to that sound. Tires on wet pavement, rain falling on the highway at night. That's not just the sound of travel. That's the sound of American mythology being written, 1 mile at a time. The 1920s roared, the cars multiplied, the roads improved. And somewhere in the planning rooms and government offices, people began to dream of something bigger, something that would connect the industrial heartland of Chicago with the promised land of California, a road that would stitch together 8 states and dozens of small towns that had never had access to anything larger than themselves. The official origin of Route 66 was a Federal Aid Highway Act of 1921, though the road itself wouldn't be officially designated until 1926. Entrepreneurs like Cyrus Avery of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and John Woodruff of Springfield, Missouri, lobbied hard for an interregional link between Chicago and Los Angeles. They understood something fundamental. Roads aren't just about transportation. They're about transformation. They change the places they touch. They bring commerce, opportunity, connection, and sometimes they bring decline to the places they bypass. But all of that was still ahead. In the early 1920s, there was just the dream, the vision of a road that would run 2,400 miles across the heart of America, from the shores of Lake Michigan to the Pacific Ocean. A road that would carry millions. A road that would become a legend. Chapter 2, The Mother Road. On November 11th, 1926, the Chicago to Los Angeles route officially received the numerical designation of Route 66. Road signs went up the following year, and America had a new highway. But calling it a highway was generous. When Route 66 was first designated, only about 800 miles of the roadway were paved. The rest was gravel, dirt, or, in some stretches like the infamous Jericho Gap in Texas, a muddy quagmire that could trap vehicles for hours. It wasn't so much a highway as it was an optimistic collection of existing roads, cobbled together and given a number. But that would change. From the outset, public road planners intended Route 66 to connect the main streets of rural and urban communities along its course. Most small towns had no prior access to a major national thoroughfare. The diagonal configuration of Route 66 was particularly significant to the trucking industry, which by 1930 had come to rival the railroad for preeminence in transporting goods. The road linked hundreds of predominantly rural communities in Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas to Chicago, enabling farmers to transport grain and produce for redistribution. Through the late 1920s and early 1930s, the nation threw itself into paving Route 66. From 1933 to 1938, thousands of unemployed male youths from virtually every state were put to work as laborers on road gangs to pave the final stretches through New Deal programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps and Works Projects Administration. It was make work during the Depression, but it was essential work that would define the nation's future. The Chicago to Los Angeles highway was reported as completely paved by 1938, making Route 66 the first highway in the system to be entirely paved. From end to end, you could now drive on smooth asphalt and concrete. No more mud, no more getting stuck in the Texas Panhandle wondering if you'd ever reach California. But by the time the road was complete, America was in the grip of something terrible. The Dust Bowl. Picture the Great Plains in the 1930s. The semi-arid grasslands had been settled for large-scale agriculture in the 1860s after Congress passed the Homestead Act. As the nation's demand for wheat grew, cattle grazing was reduced and more acres were plowed and planted. Dry land farming combined with overgrazing destroyed the natural prairie grasses. The land became increasingly bare, and the strong winds found naturally in the Great Plains began to literally blow the land away. Huge clouds of dust darkened the sky for days and drifted like snow, covering farm buildings and homes. On Sunday, April 14th, 1935, a day remembered as Black Sunday, a huge dust cloud pushed at 60 miles per hour blackened the sky. The dust penetrated everything and everywhere. Farmers watched their topsoil blow away. Their crops withered. Their livelihoods disappeared into the choking air. And the Great Depression was already crushing them with falling crop prices and mounting debts. Between 1931 and 1933, 10% of Oklahoma farmers lost their land to foreclosure, and tenant farmers, who comprised more than 60% of Oklahoma farmers, had little incentive to endure poor crops and low prices year after year. So they left. Between 1930 and 1940, approximately 2.5 million people moved from the Plain States, with an estimated 200,000 to 500,000 settling in California. Oklahoma suffered a net loss through migration of 440,000 during the Great Depression decade. And where did they go? How did they get there? Route 66. Many Dust Bowl migrants took Route 66, the famous highway running from Chicago to Los Angeles. This iconic roadway became synonymous with westward migration. Families loaded everything they owned into old Ford Model Ts or beat-up trucks. They said goodbye to the land that had failed them, to farms that would never grow anything again, to homes that were being buried under drifts of their own soil. And they headed west. The journey was anything but easy. Vehicles overloaded with people and possessions frequently broke down. Money was tight, and many travelers relied on free or low-cost campsites along the road. They traveled with children who didn't understand why they were leaving, with elderly parents who might not survive the trip, with hope that was as fragile as it was desperate. California's climate, relief payments, and chances for work attracted the Dust Bowl migrants. Growers in the San Joaquin Valley quadrupled their acreage in the mid-1930s, and the demand for workers rose. California cotton growers paid nearly 50% more for picking cotton than farms in the southern plains. Word spread that there was work in California, that you could pick fruit or cotton or vegetables, that there was a future there even if it was hard, even if you had to start over with nothing. So they came. By the tens of thousands, they came. The vast migration of destitute people fleeing the privation of their former homes actually produced an increased volume of business along Route 66, providing commercial opportunities for low capital, mom and pop businesses. Gas stations appeared, diners opened, motor courts sprang up to house the travelers. The road began to develop its own ecosystem, its own economy based on movement and transience. But for the migrants themselves, the journey was harrowing. Picture a family of 4 in a loaded-down jalopy crossing the Texas Panhandle in summer heat. The mother holding a baby, trying to keep the child hydrated. The father gripping the wheel, watching the temperature gauge, praying the engine doesn't overheat. An older child in the back, pressed against bundles of their belongings, staring out at the endless flat landscape and wondering if they'll ever see trees again. They stop at a gas station. The attendant looks at them with a mixture of pity and contempt. He's seen hundreds, like them, thousands, these Okies, as they're called, though they might be from Arkansas or Missouri or Kansas. The term Okie denoted any poverty-stricken migrant from the Southwest, regardless of their actual state of origin. The father asks how far to the next town, asks if there's any work around here. The attendant shakes his head. Keeps moving, he says. Nothing here for you. California's where you need to be. So they keep moving. The road becomes their whole world. The center line, the horizon, the next town, the next meal, the next place to sleep. Everything else falls away. All that matters is forward motion. Getting there, surviving. John Steinbeck captured this exodus in his 1939 novel, The Grapes of Wrath. Steinbeck, who had made his own journey west on Route 66 with his wife in 1937, illustrated the plight of the Dust Bowl migrants by following the fictional Joad family as they traveled westward down the highway to escape barren Oklahoma. In the novel, Steinbeck wrote, "Highway 66 is the main migrant road, the long concrete path across the country, waving gently up and down on the map. 66 is the path of people in flight, refugees from dust and shrinking land, from the thunder of tractors and shrinking ownership. 66 is the mother road, the road of flight. The mother road, that's what he called it. And the name stuck." The 1939 novel, combined with the 1940 film adaptation, directed by John Ford, served to immortalize Route 66 in the American consciousness. People who had never been on the road knew about it. People who had never left their hometowns understood what it represented. Hope, desperation, perseverance. The belief that somewhere else, things had to be better. The migrants endured. They made it to California. Most of them, anyway. And there they found more hardship. Life in California was not as idyllic as hoped. Migrant children attended school with native California residents and stood out in their barefoot poverty. The native children teased them, calling them Maggie or maggot instead of migrant. Teachers attacked the children's accents, vocabulary, religion, and grammar. Schools even taught them to bring sandwiches for lunch instead of biscuits and beans. The children learned to be ashamed. Ashamed of how they talked, how they dressed, where they came from. But they survived. The families found work in the fields. They lived in labor camps. Some lived in government camps with elected representatives and rules, places where everyone was equally poor and that equality felt like dignity. Slowly, year by year, they built new lives. They stayed. They became Californians. They never forgot the road that brought them there. Route 66 had become more than a highway. It was a migration route, a path of flight and hope, a road that carried people away from despair toward an uncertain future. And under stormy skies, with thunder rolling across the plains, families kept coming, kept driving, kept believing that the mother road would lead them somewhere better. The perseverance of those Dust Bowl families became part of the road's mythology. Their suffering and determination were woven into the asphalt itself. Every mile marker was a testament to survival. Every small town they passed through remembered them. The desperate faces, the overloaded vehicles, the children with hollowed-out eyes. Route 66 would go on to represent many things: freedom, adventure, prosperity. But it started as something else, something darker and more necessary. It started as an escape route, a way out, the road of last resort for people who had nowhere else to go. And that desperation, that raw need, that became part of the road's soul. Chapter 3, Neon Nights. The war came, World War II, and Route 66 shifted again, taking on yet another role in the American story. The Second World War caused a decline in civilian traffic initially, but stimulated new business along Route 66 as troops and supplies were moved between military bases. Completion of the road's all-weather capability on the eve of World War II was particularly significant to the nation's war effort. Near Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, part of the route was quickly upgraded to a divided highway to handle military traffic. Young men in uniform traveled the road, heading to training camps, heading to ports, heading toward an uncertain future in Europe or the Pacific. Their families followed them when they could, seeking extended lodging near military bases. Restaurants, service stations, and motels saw business increase as families of military personnel traveled the route. The war ended. The soldiers came home, and post-war America exploded with prosperity and possibility. After World War II, the lifting of wartime rationing, the inclusion of 2-week paid vacations in most labor union contracts, pent-up demand for consumer goods, and general post-war affluence ensured the automobile industry banner sales that lasted into the 1950s. Americans had money, they had time. They had a hunger for pleasure and leisure that had been deferred for too long. And they had Route 66, the 1950s, the golden age of the Mother Road. This is what most people picture when they think of Route 66 today. In the post-war era, Route 66 symbolized unprecedented freedom and mobility for every citizen who could afford to own and operate a car. Picture it. A family station wagon gleaming in the sunlight, dad at the wheel, mom beside him with a road atlas. Kids in the back, faces pressed to the windows, counting license plates from different states. They're heading west, to California, to see Disneyland, just opened in 1955, to see the Grand Canyon, to visit relatives in Arizona or New Mexico or Oklahoma. Families with more income and leisure time began the tradition of the Great American Road Trip, heading west on Route 66 to destinations such as the Grand Canyon, Disneyland, and California beaches. And along the way, a whole world sprung up to serve them. The neon lights came on as the sun went down. Motel signs flickered to life, glowing in the dusk. Vacancies advertised in bright colors. Names that promised comfort and adventure. The Blue Swallow, the Munger Moss, the Wagon Wheel, the Wigwam. The Blue Swallow Motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico, opened in 1939 and featured neon lights, garages for each room, and Art Deco architecture, making it a classic stop for families. The Wigwam Motel in Holbrook, Arizona, established in 1950, allowed families to sleep in a teepee, with rooms built in the shape of Native American-style tents. Can you picture it? A child's wonder at staying in a teepee-shaped room, the strangeness and delight of it, the way it turned travel into adventure, made the ordinary extraordinary. The highway became known for quirky roadside attractions and unique mom-and-pop motels, constructed between the late 1920s and late 1950s and often clad in neon. Neon-lit motels, quirky roadside diners, and unique tourist traps sprung up, each adding to the lore of the Mother Road. The diners? Oh, the diners. Everything in the diners was handpicked, from the soda fountain and milkshake machines, all original 1950s hardware, to the jukebox playing the latest hits. Inside the diners, the jukebox played tunes that set toes tapping and dreams dancing. The aroma of sizzling bacon was irresistible. Conversations flowed as freely as the coffee, each cup refilled with laughter. These weren't chain restaurants. These were places where the owner knew your name after one visit, where the waitress called you honey and meant it, where the coffee was always hot and the pie was always fresh, where chrome counters gleamed under fluorescent lights and red vinyl booths offered comfort after hours on the road. Bobby Troupe's song Route 66 became popular, and the hit 1960s television series Route 66, about two young men looking for adventure, added new mystique to the route. The song, with its catchy lyrics naming the towns along the way, St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, Oklahoma City looks mighty pretty, became an anthem. Everyone knew it. Everyone sang along. The road had become iconic. It was appearing in songs, on television, in the collective imagination of America. It represented something essential about the country, something about freedom and movement, and the open road stretching endlessly ahead. The Big Texan Steak Ranch in Amarillo opened in 1960, offering oversized portions and a free 72-ounce steak challenge. This sharp increase in tourism gave rise to a burgeoning trade in all manner of roadside attractions, including teepee-shaped motels, frozen custard stands, Indian curio shops, and reptile farms. Every town wanted to catch the traveler's eye, wanted to be the place where you stopped, where you spent money, where you created a memory. So they built the strange and the wonderful. Giant dinosaurs, mystery houses, caverns lit with colored lights, trading posts filled with turquoise and silver, anything to break up the monotony of the highway, to give travelers a story to tell when they got home. Merrimack Caverns, near St. Louis, began advertising on barns, billing itself as the Jesse James Hideout. It didn't matter if it was historically accurate, it mattered that it was interesting, that it gave you a reason to pull off the highway and spend an hour, spend some dollars, take some photographs. The roadside architecture became an art form. Buildings like the 66 Diner in Albuquerque, originally built as a Phillips 66 gas and service station in 1945, were repurposed with black and white checkerboard patterns as a sock-hopping ode to 1950s diners. The style was exuberant, optimistic. It didn't take itself seriously, it was fun. And at night, when the neon came on, it was magic. Picture driving through a small town in New Mexico as the sun sets. The sky is still bright with afterglow, deep blue fading to orange on the western horizon. And ahead of you, the first neon signs begin to glow. A motel sign in pink and blue, promising clean rooms and reasonable rates. A diner sign in red and white, flashing an arrow pointing to the door. A gas station with Phillips 66 in orange neon, the numbers themselves part of the iconography of the road. The signs created a landscape of light in the darkness. They were beacons, promises. They said, here is warmth, here is food, here is rest, here you belong, at least for tonight. The restored neon signs along Route 66 indicate locations with their peculiar glow. Vintage motels, rich in charm and magic, in full Route 66 atmosphere. Inside the motels, the rooms were simple but clean. Chenille bedspreads. Small black and white televisions. Maybe a painting of a desert landscape or a mountain scene on the wall. A bathroom with a shower that worked and towels that were white. Nothing fancy. But after hours on the road, it was everything. Families would check in, unload the car, maybe walk to a nearby diner for supper. The kids would be tired and wired at the same time, too excited to sleep, too exhausted to stay awake. They'd watch television until their eyes closed. The parents would sit outside on the walkway, smoking cigarettes, talking quietly, watching the traffic pass on the highway. There was a sense of community in these places. The culture of hospitality became synonymous with the Route 66 experience. Many establishments adapted by offering affordable services and goods, creating a unique connection with travelers. The motel owners knew they might never see you again, but they treated you like you mattered, like your journey was important, like you were part of something larger than yourself. And in a way, you were. You were part of the great American pilgrimage west, part of the tradition of movement and exploration that went back to the wagon trains and the pioneers. You were following in the tire tracks of millions who had come before you, and millions would come after. The rain falls on chrome bumpers in the parking lot, taps on the tin roof of the diner, creates halos around the neon signs, makes everything shimmer and glow in the darkness. This was the height of Route 66, the moment when it represented everything good about post-war America: prosperity, leisure, family, adventure. The freedom to get in your car and go wherever you wanted, whenever you wanted. It couldn't last forever. Nothing that perfect ever does. But for a while, for those golden years in the 1950s and early 1960s, Route 66 was exactly what America wanted to be: open, welcoming, full of possibility. A place where anyone could find somewhere they belonged, if only for a night. Chapter 4: The Ghost Towns. The beginning of the end came in 1956. President Eisenhower, who had witnessed the military advantages of the German Autobahn during World War II, supported the passage of the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, creating a national system of interstate highways. The goal was simple: create high-speed, limited access, 4-lane divided highways that would move traffic efficiently across the country. When President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, Route 66 was booming. It was a victim of its own success. The interstate system was designed by engineers and planners who thought in terms of efficiency: the shortest distance between 2 points, the fastest way to move from A to B. The interstate highways were designed by people often far away from the place where they were constructed. The goal was traveling long distances in the shortest amount of time possible, without much consideration given to who or what the highway was bypassing or cutting through. Route 66 had always meandered. Route 66 rose and fell with the land, winding directly through countless small towns. That was part of its charm, part of what made it the Mother Road. It connected places, it linked communities. It ran down main streets, past storefronts and diners and gas stations. But the new interstates didn't do that. The new interstate highways were constructed outside population centers, with ramps giving drivers access to and from local areas. The interstate system's limited access design prescribed controlled entry and exit points for cars. You didn't drive through towns anymore, you drove past them. 5 new interstates, I-55, I-44, I-40, I-15, and I-10, incrementally replaced Route 66 over the next 3 decades. Section by section, the old road was bypassed. The traffic moved to the new highway, and the towns along Route 66 began to die. Not all at once, not overnight. Changes for some towns were particularly drastic, especially those located on sections of Route 66 that were completely bypassed by the interstate system. It's difficult to overstate how quickly the new interstate affected businesses along the bypass sections. Picture a small town in Arizona. Let's call it what it was: Oatman. In 1953, the Oatman Highway through the Black Mountains was completely bypassed by a new route between Kingman, Arizona, and Needles, California. By the 1960s, Oatman was virtually abandoned as a ghost town. One year, Oatman is thriving. The main street is busy, the gas stations are full, the diners serve hundreds of travelers a day. The motel has no vacancies on summer weekends. Business owners are making plans to expand, to add rooms, to buy new equipment. The future looks bright. Then the interstate opens, the traffic vanishes. Almost overnight, it's gone. At first, the business owners are optimistic. Some people will still take the old road, the scenic route, the historic route, and some do. But not enough, not nearly enough. The gas station that used to pump gas for 200 cars a day is now seeing 20, 10, 5. The owner can't make the payments, can't afford to restock, can't keep employees. The diner, where the waitress knew every regular customer's usual order, now serves mostly coffee to the few locals who remain. The eggs get cheaper, the coffee gets weaker, the repairs don't get made. The neon sign flickers and goes dark. The motel owner watches the traffic stream past on the interstate in the distance, watches the lights of the cars and trucks moving fast, never slowing, never stopping. He puts out the vacancy sign every night, even though there are no guests, even though there haven't been guests for weeks, because not putting it out would be admitting defeat, would be accepting that it's over. The displacement of Route 66 signage to the new freeways, combined with restrictions in the 1965 Highway Beautification Act that often denied merchants on the old road access to signage on the freeway, became factors in the closure of many established Route 66 businesses as travelers could no longer easily find or reach them. Even if people wanted to stop, they didn't know these places existed, couldn't see them from the highway, couldn't exit easily to reach them. The interstates created a wall between the travelers and the towns, an invisible barrier of speed and efficiency that left the old places stranded on the wrong side. One by one, the businesses closed. The owners moved away or retired or gave up. The buildings stood empty. Windows broke, roofs leaked, paint peeled. Neon signs that once glowed with welcome fell dark and stayed dark. As interstates bypassed towns and cities, Route 66 was gradually fragmented and decommissioned. Roadside diners, motels, and gas stations that had flourished during its heyday began to shutter as traffic diminished and economic lifelines disappeared. With the construction and completion of the interstate highway system, many small towns along Route 66 were bypassed. The businesses closed, and with that, small towns became ghost towns, dusty reminders of an era gone by. Ghost towns. That's what they became. Not all of them. Some survived by finding other industries, other purposes, but many didn't. Many simply faded away. Route 66 was officially removed from the U.S. highway system on June 27, 1985, after it was decided the route was no longer relevant and had been replaced by the interstate highway system. The highway that had carried millions west, that had sustained hundreds of communities, that had become an American icon, was declared obsolete, erased from the maps, forgotten by the government that had created it. But the ghost towns remained. Visit them today, these remnants of Route 66. Drive through at dusk when the light is fading and the shadows are long. You'll see the empty storefronts, windows covered with plywood or shattered glass. You'll see the old motels with their doors hanging open, revealing rooms full of debris and broken furniture. You'll see gas pumps that haven't pumped gas in 40 years, their displays frozen at prices that seem impossible now. And if it's raining, if the streets are wet and reflecting what little light remains, you'll see something else. You'll see beauty. There's something hauntingly beautiful about these places. The way nature is slowly reclaiming what was built. The way vines grow through broken windows. The way wildflowers push up through cracked asphalt. The way the desert dust settles over everything like a shroud. The rain-slick streetlights glow in the gathering darkness, illuminating empty main streets. The few lights that still work cast puddles of yellow on wet pavement. Steam rises from the asphalt, and in that moment, in that particular quality of light and shadow and wetness, you can almost see what these places used to be. You can almost hear the laughter from the diner, the jukebox playing, the children running down the sidewalk with ice cream cones, the cars pulling up to gas pumps, the families checking into motels, the life that used to fill these streets. The silence holds stories. Every abandoned building is a repository of memory. The motel where a young couple spent their honeymoon. The diner where a truck driver stopped every week for 20 years. The gas station where a kid pumped gas to save money for college. The trading post where tourists bought turquoise jewelry and postcards. All of it is still there, in a way, not physically. Most of the people are gone, moved away, or passed on, but the memory is there, the echo of what was, the ghost of better days. Some of these ghost towns have found new life as tourist attractions, places where people come to photograph the ruins, to walk the empty streets, to imagine what it must have been like, but many haven't. Many are just abandoned, forgotten, left to crumble slowly under the desert sun. There's melancholy in that, a sadness that's hard to articulate. These places mattered. They were people's dreams, their livelihoods, their homes, and they were discarded in the name of progress, in the name of efficiency, in the name of getting somewhere faster. But here's the thing about beauty and decay. It reminds us that nothing lasts forever, that everything we build will eventually fall, that time moves on whether we're ready or not. And maybe there's wisdom in that. Maybe there's something important about bearing witness to these ghost towns, about remembering what was lost in the rush to move forward, about honoring the people who built these places, who believed in them, who watched them die. The rain falls on empty streets, on rusted signs, on buildings that will soon be gone entirely. And in that rain, in that soft percussion on tin roofs and broken windows, there's a kind of benediction, a gentle farewell, an acknowledgement that these places existed, that they mattered, that they still deserve to be remembered. Chapter 5, Rain on the Plains. Let's slow down for a moment. Let's just breathe and listen. The plains, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, these are the places where the sky is bigger than anywhere else, where you can see weather coming from 50 miles away, where thunderstorms build on the horizon like architecture, towers of cumulus rising into the stratosphere. If you've driven Route 66 through the plains, you know what I'm talking about. The landscape is horizontal, flat or gently rolling. The road stretches ahead in a straight line, mile after mile, with nothing to break the monotony except occasional grain elevators or clusters of trees marking distant farmhouses. It's easy to find it boring, to think there's nothing here, but if you pay attention, if you really look, you'll see that there's a kind of majesty to it, a grandeur in the openness, in the way the land meets the sky without anything in between. And when the storms come, that's when you understand. The clouds pile up in the west, dark and heavy. You watch them build, watch them move. The light changes, turns greenish, then golden, then dark. The wind picks up, bending the wheat in waves that ripple across the fields like water. Thunder rolls across the plains, deep, resonant. You don't just hear it, you feel it in your chest, in your bones. Every thunder roll sounds like the sky remembering. Remembering what? Everything. The settlers who broke this land with plows. The native peoples who lived here for thousands of years before them. The buffalo that once darkened the earth in herds of millions. The dust bowl that nearly killed everything. The migrants who fled west on Route 66, looking up at these same clouds, praying for rain that came too late. The sky remembers all of it, and when it thunders, it's telling you the story. You just have to listen. The rain starts slowly, a few drops on the windshield, then more, then a downpour that turns the world into a blur of water. You slow down, turn on your headlights and wipers, peer through the sheeting rain at the center line ahead. This is meditation. This is the moment where time loses meaning, where all that exists is the hum of tires on wet pavement, the rhythm of the wipers, the percussion of rain on metal and glass. The wheat fields are drinking it in. After months of heat and sun, the rain is a blessing. You can almost hear the land sighing in relief, the dust settling, the earth softening, everything green and growing things turning their faces up to receive what they need. On the plains, weather isn't just weather. It's everything. It determines if crops live or die, if families stay or leave, if towns survive or become ghost towns. The people who live here know this. They watch the sky with an intensity city people can't understand, because the sky decides their fate. During the Dust Bowl, the sky brought dust instead of rain, brought darkness at noon, brought choking clouds that killed livestock and buried farms. The sky was the enemy then, capricious, cruel, unforgiving. But now, in the rain, the sky is merciful, generous, life-giving. You pull off at a rest stop, get out, and stand in the rain, feel it on your face, taste it. Smell that particular scent of rain on dust, that petrichor that means renewal. Watch the lightning fork across the dark sky, illuminating the landscape in brief, brilliant flashes. In those moments of lightning, you see the plains revealed, every detail sharp, the power lines, the fence posts, the distant grain elevator, the road stretching away, and then darkness again, thunder following seconds later, closer now. There's something primal about this, about standing in a thunderstorm on the Great Plains with nothing between you and the sky. Something that connects you to everyone who's ever stood here watching the weather. The Dust Bowl farmers hoping for rain, the native peoples who lived with these storms for generations, the truck drivers who've driven this route in every kind of weather, the families in station wagons pulled over on the shoulder waiting for the worst to pass. You're all connected, all part of the same story, the story of human beings trying to make their way across this vast landscape, trying to survive, trying to get somewhere, trying to find home. The rain eases, becomes lighter, softer. The thunder moves east, grumbling into the distance. The light changes again, turning golden as the sun finds a gap in the clouds. Steam rises from the pavement, from the fields. Everything glistens. You get back in the car, start the engine, pull back onto the highway. The world feels washed clean, renewed. The colors are brighter. The air is clearer. Even the road ahead looks different, more inviting, more full of possibility. Every puddle on the pavement reflects the sky. Clouds moving, light shifting. The road becomes a mirror, showing you heaven and earth at once, and you drive through it, through that reflected sky, feeling like you're moving through two worlds at the same time. This is what the plains teach you. Patience, awareness, the ability to find beauty in subtlety, the appreciation for what changes slowly, for the drama that builds gradually and then releases all at once in thunder and lightning and rain. The plain section of Route 66 was never the most popular. People wanted to get through it quickly, to reach the mountains or the desert or the coast. But those who paid attention, who really saw it, understood that the plains were the heart of the journey, the place where you had time to think, to reflect, to understand what this road really meant. Because on the plains, there's nothing to distract you. No roadside attractions every mile, no dramatic landscapes to photograph, just you and the road and the sky, just the fundamental elements of the journey, and the rain. Always, eventually the rain, falling on this ancient land, falling on this ribbon of asphalt that humans built, falling on everyone who passes through, whether they notice or not. The rain connects everything, the past and the present, the dust and the growth, the leaving and the arriving. It's been falling on these plains for millions of years, and it will keep falling long after Route 66 is completely forgotten, long after the last stretch of asphalt crumbles, long after the last memory fades. But for now, in this moment, the rain falls on you, on your journey, on whatever brought you to this place, this road, this particular moment in time. And that rain is a kind of blessing, a reminder that you're part of something larger, something that includes everyone who's ever traveled this road, everyone who's ever looked up at these plains and felt small and significant all at once. Listen to it, the rain. Let it slow your thoughts, calm your mind. Wash away whatever you're carrying that you don't need anymore. The plains are teaching you. The sky is speaking. The rain is writing its message on the surface of the road. And if you're quiet enough, if you're present enough, you'll understand what it's saying. Chapter 6. The Desert Waits. The landscape changes as you move west. Gradually at first, then all at once, the plains give way to mesas. Flat land becomes canyon country. Green fades to gold, then to red and orange and colors that don't have names. You're in New Mexico now. Arizona ahead. The desert. The desert is different. It's not just a change of scenery. It's a change of everything. The air, the light, the feeling in your bones. The desert operates on different rules, demands different things from you, offers different rewards. Route 66 cuts through some of the most spectacular desert landscapes in America. Past the painted desert, where layers of colored sediment create a landscape that looks like it belongs on another planet. Through Petrified Forest National Park, where ancient trees have turned to stone and lie scattered across the Badlands like fallen gods. The desert section of Route 66 ran through New Mexico and Arizona, passing through places like Albuquerque, Gallup, Flagstaff, and Seligman. This was where the road got interesting, where it climbed into pine forests at elevation, then dropped back down into valleys of red rock and sand, where it passed through Native American lands, past trading posts selling turquoise and silver and woven rugs. The desert motel culture along Route 66 flourished here. Places like the Wigwam Village, where you could sleep in concrete teepees. The Desert Hills Motel in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where each room was a miniature pueblo. These weren't just places to sleep. They were part of the experience, part of the romance of the desert. But the desert is also harsh, unforgiving, beautiful, yes, achingly beautiful, but deadly if you're unprepared. Route 66 crossed long stretches of desert where there was nothing. No water, no shade, no help if your car broke down. The early travelers knew this. They carried extra water, extra gas, tools. They checked their vehicles before heading into the desert sections. They traveled in the early morning or late evening to avoid the worst heat. They respected the desert, feared it even, because the desert could kill you, still can. Every year people underestimate it, think they can cross it in an overheating car without water, think they can walk to the next town if they break down. The desert proves them wrong. But if you approach the desert with respect, if you're prepared, it reveals wonders. The colors, the sunsets that turn the sky every shade of pink and orange and purple. The way light moves across rock formations, changing them moment by moment. The clarity of the air so clean you can see for 100 miles. The stars at night, so many and so bright, they look like someone spilled sugar across black velvet. The ghost motels. There are dozens of them along the desert stretches of Route 66. Places that thrived in the 1950s and died in the 1970s when the interstate bypassed them. Now they stand empty, their signs faded or fallen, their swimming pools filled with sand, their rooms open to the sky where roofs have caved in. In the desert, these ruins take on a particular quality. The dry air preserves them in a way. They don't rot or rust as quickly as they would in humid climates. They just fade, bleach out, turn the color of sand and stone, drive past one at sunset. The golden light hits the old stucco walls. The empty windows glow like eyes. The shadows are long and sharp, and for a moment you can see it as it was. The neon lit up. Cars in the parking lot. Families checking in after a long day's drive. Children splashing in the pool. The promise of rest and coolness after the desert heat. But that's memory. Ghost memory, really. The reality is silence, stillness, the slow dissolution of human ambition back into the landscape. Even the desert dreams of storms. That's the thing people don't understand about the desert. It's not always dry. It's not always hot. The desert has its own weather patterns, its own dramas. In summer, the monsoons come, thunderstorms build over the mountains in the afternoon, then move out across the desert. The lightning is spectacular, brilliant white bolts striking red rock, the thunder echoing off canyon walls, and the rain, when it comes, is violent. Flash floods roar down arroyos. Dry washes become raging rivers in minutes. The desert drinks deep, storing water in underground aquifers that will sustain life through the dry months ahead. Sometimes you can see the rain in the distance, a gray curtain connecting sky and earth. You're driving in bright sunshine, but ahead of you, the world is dark with storm. You can see the rain falling, can see where the pavement turns from bone dry to soaking wet. And then you drive into that curtain of water, and everything changes. The temperature drops 20 degrees in as many seconds. The dust smell gives way to the smell of wet earth. The sky goes dark. And the rain hammers on your car, so loud you can barely hear yourself think. In winter, the desert gets cold. Snow falls on the higher elevations. The San Francisco peaks outside Flagstaff turn white. Route 66 climbs to over 7,000 feet in places, and at that elevation, winter is real. Ice on the road. Below freezing temperatures at night. The need for good heat and warm blankets. The early travelers didn't always know this. They thought of the desert as hot, period. Then they'd hit a snowstorm crossing into Arizona and realize their mistake. More than one family spent a cold night in a stranded car, wondering how they'd misjudged so badly. But in all its moods, the desert is magnificent. It demands attention, demands that you slow down and really look, really see. Because the desert doesn't give up its secrets easily. You have to work for them. You have to notice the tiny flowers that bloom after rain, the lizards sunning on rocks, the way the light changes the color of sandstone from red to orange to purple, depending on the time of day, the patterns in the sand written by wind, the petroglyphs on canyon walls, left by people who understood this land in ways we've forgotten. The desert sections of Route 66 are where the road becomes mystical, where it transcends mere transportation and becomes something else. A pilgrimage route, maybe, a vision quest, a journey into yourself as much as across the landscape. The Native American presence is strong here. The road passes through parts of the Navajo Nation, past Hopi lands, through territories where indigenous people have lived for thousands of years, where their connection to the land goes deeper than any road, any highway, any human construction. The trading posts reflect this. Places like the Hubble Trading Post, established in 1878 and still operating. Places where you can buy genuine handmade jewelry and rugs and pottery, where the transaction is more than commercial, where there is respect, history, a recognition that this land belonged to others first. And at night, the desert transforms again, becomes a place of shadow and suggestion. The road ahead disappears into darkness. Your headlights catch the eyes of animals at the roadside, jackrabbits, coyotes, sometimes a deer. You're alone out here, really alone. No other cars, no lights except your own. Just you and the road and the enormous desert night pressing in from all sides. It should be frightening. And maybe it is, a little. But it's also exhilarating, freeing. You're moving through country that's barely changed since before humans existed, under stars that have looked down on this land for billions of years, part of something vast and ancient and eternal. The desert doesn't care about Route 66, doesn't care about the interstate that replaced it, doesn't care about any human concern. The desert simply exists, waits, endures. And someday, long after the last traces of Route 66 have vanished, the desert will still be here, still red and gold and beautiful and harsh, still teaching the same lessons to whoever has eyes to see. For now, though, the road remains, winding through the canyons, climbing the mesas, dropping into valleys, connecting the small towns that persist. The diner in Holbrook, the motel in Winslow, the trading post in Sanders, the gas station in Seligman. These are the survivors, the places that found a way to keep going after the interstate bypassed them. Some did it by embracing Route 66 nostalgia, becoming tourist destinations for people seeking the authentic road experience. Others just endured through stubbornness and luck and the patronage of locals who never stopped coming. But they're all desert places now, part of the desert, shaped by it, connected to it in ways that go beyond geography. They understand what the desert teaches: patience, endurance, the ability to survive with very little, the strength to wait for better times. Even the desert dreams of storms, dreams of water, of abundance, of the rare perfect days when everything blooms and the world is transformed. And when those storms come, when the rain falls on red rock and washes across the desert floor, when lightning illuminates canyons and thunder shakes the earth, the desert remembers that it's alive, not dead, not barren, just waiting, always waiting, for the rain, for the season, for the moment when life bursts forth again. Chapter 7. The People Who Stayed. Let's talk about the people, the ones who didn't leave when the interstate opened, the ones who stayed in the small towns along Route 66, even as the traffic disappeared and the businesses closed, and everyone said there was no future here. These are the people who understand something essential about place, about home, about the stubborn human insistence on belonging somewhere, even when that somewhere is dying. Meet Ruby. She's worked at the same diner in a small Oklahoma town for 43 years. She started as a waitress when she was 17, just out of high school. Now she's 60, and she runs the place. Owns it, actually. Bought it from the previous owner 15 years ago when he retired. The diner used to be busy. Back in the Route 66 days, they'd serve 300 people on a good day. Travelers heading west, truckers stopping for coffee and pie, locals coming in for breakfast before work. The cash register rang constantly, the jukebox played, the booths were always full. Now, Ruby's lucky if she gets 30 customers a day, mostly locals. A few tourists who've made the deliberate choice to drive the old road instead of the interstate. Some days she wonders why she bothers staying open, but she does. Every morning at 5 a.m., she unlocks a door and turns on the lights and starts the coffee. She makes pie from scratch, like she's always done: pecan, cherry, apple. The same recipes she learned from the previous owner, who learned them from the owner before that. Ruby knows every regular customer by name, knows what they order, knows their stories. The man who comes in every morning at 6:15 and sits at the counter and drinks 3 cups of black coffee while reading the newspaper. The elderly couple who come for lunch every Wednesday always sit in the same booth, always split a club sandwich. The trucker who stops every few weeks on his route always orders a piece of pie and tells her about his granddaughter. These people are why she stays. They need this place, this familiar spot, this routine. If the diner closed, where would they go? What would they do? The nearest restaurant is 23 miles away on the interstate. That's not the same. That's not home. Ruby has seen travelers come through who remember this diner from 30 years ago. They stopped here on a family vacation when they were kids. Now, they're bringing their own children, wanting to show them something from their past, wanting to recapture a memory. Sometimes they're disappointed. The diner is shabbier than they remembered, smaller, the menu is simpler, the parking lot is emptier, but Ruby makes them feel welcome, talks to them, serves them the same food they remember, and usually by the time they leave, they're smiling, because the essence of the place is still there, the feeling, the spirit. Ruby will keep the diner open as long as she can, until her body won't let her anymore, or until the building falls down around her, whichever comes first. Not because it makes financial sense, it doesn't. She barely breaks even most months, but because this is who she is. This is what she does. This diner is her life's work, and she'll be damned if she'll let it die while she's still breathing. Now meet Carl. He's a trucker. Has been for 36 years. Drives the same route over and over. Oklahoma City to Flagstaff and back. Sometimes he takes the interstate. It's faster. But at least once a month, he drives old Route 66 instead. Takes the long way, the scenic way. Why? Because he remembers what it used to be. He started driving when Route 66 was still active, before it was fully replaced by I-40. He remembers the motor courts and the diners and the trading posts. Remembers when every small town along the route was alive and vibrant. He's watched them die one by one, watched the businesses close, watched the people move away, watched the buildings decay. It breaks his heart a little every time he drives through, but he keeps driving it. Keeps stopping at the places that are still open. Ruby's Diner, a motel in Tucumcari, a trading post outside Gallup. He spends money there even when there are cheaper options on the interstate, even when it costs him time, because he feels like he owes it to them, to the people who stayed. Carl has a photograph in his truck cab. It's old, faded, from 1989. It shows a motel in New Mexico, the Blue Swallow, all lit up at night with its neon sign glowing. He stayed there on one of his first solo runs, met the owner, an older woman named Lillian. She gave him coffee and told him stories about the old days on Route 66, made him feel like family. Lillian's gone now, passed away years ago, but the motel is still there, still operating, still maintained by people who care. Carl stays there every time he runs this route, sleeps in the same type of room, looks at that neon sign, remembers Lillian. For Carl, driving Route 66 is an act of remembrance, of honoring what was, of refusing to let it be completely forgotten. He talks to other truckers about it, tells them to drive the old road sometimes, to see what's still there, to spend money at the mom and pop places instead of the interstate chains. Some of them listen, most don't. They're younger. They never knew Route 66 when it was alive. To them, it's just a slower route, an inconvenience. They don't understand why it matters. But Carl understands. He carries the memory, and he'll keep driving that road, keep stopping at those places as long as he's able to turn a steering wheel. Then there's Walter. He owns a motel in Arizona, 12 rooms, built in 1947. His father built it. His father, who saw opportunity when Route 66 was new and growing, who built this motel with his own hands, who ran it for 40 years before Walter took over. The motel was good to them, paid for Walter's education, put food on the table, allowed his father to retire comfortably. In the 1950s and 60s, they had to turn people away on busy weekends. Had a waiting list. People called ahead to make reservations. Then the interstate came, 1978. The traffic moved. The reservations stopped. Within 2 years, occupancy dropped by 80%. Walter's father wanted to close the place, said it was over, time to sell. But Walter wouldn't let him, couldn't let him. This motel was family history, was his inheritance, was his identity. He took over running it, found ways to cut costs, did all the maintenance himself, cleaned the rooms, changed the sheets, fixed the plumbing and the electrical and the roof. He marketed to Route 66 enthusiasts, put up a website, listed the motel in the historic route guides. Slowly, gradually, a new type of customer emerged. Not families on vacation, not business travelers, but pilgrims. People deliberately seeking out the authentic Route 66 experience. They don't come in huge numbers, but they come. Enough to keep the motel alive. Enough to justify staying open. Walter typically has 3 or 4 rooms occupied on any given night, sometimes more on weekends, sometimes none at all. He's in his 70s now. His children don't want the motel. They moved away years ago, to cities, to modern lives. They tell him to sell, to retire, to enjoy his remaining years without the burden of this struggling business. But Walter can't, won't. This motel is all that's left of his father's dream, his father's work. When he walks through these rooms, he sees his father building them, sees his mother cleaning them, sees himself as a child playing in the parking lot while his parents worked. The motel is a time capsule. The rooms haven't changed much since the 1960s. The furniture is original. The wallpaper, the fixtures. Some guests love that, the authenticity, the feeling of stepping back in time. Others complain, want modern amenities, Wi-Fi, flat screen TVS, updated bathrooms. Walter makes small concessions, added Wi-Fi, put in new mattresses, updated the plumbing, but he's kept the character, the soul, because that's what matters. That's what people are really coming for, even if they don't always realize it. On slow nights, Walter sits in the office and watches the occasional car drive past on the old highway. He remembers when this road was full, when the neon lights of motels stretched in both directions, when you could hear laughter from the swimming pools, when the future seemed bright and endless. He's not bitter exactly. He understands progress, understands why the interstates were built, understands that the world moves on, but he's sad. Sad for what was lost, sad for the communities that died, sad for the way of life that disappeared, and yet he's still here, still turning on the vacancy sign every night, still welcoming the travelers who find their way here, still maintaining this little piece of history because someone has to remember, someone has to care, someone has to say this mattered, this was important. These places, these roads, these stories deserve to be preserved. Ruby and Carl and Walter. They're not unique. There are dozens like them. Hundreds, maybe. People who stayed when leaving would have made more sense. People who kept businesses open that should have closed. People who refused to let Route 66 die completely. They're the guardians, the keepers of memory, the ones who understand that a road is more than pavement, that a town is more than buildings, that home is something worth fighting for, even when the fight seems hopeless. They don't do it for recognition. Most of them would be embarrassed to be called heroes. They're just doing what feels right, what feels necessary, keeping the lights on, keeping the door open, keeping the memory alive. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. Because as long as people like Ruby and Carl and Walter exist, Route 66 isn't really dead. It's transformed, yes. Diminished, certainly. But not dead. Still alive in the hearts and hands of people who refuse to let it go. Still alive in the coffee served at 5 a.m. In the truck driver who takes the old road. In the motel sign that glows in the dark. Still alive in the quiet dignity of people who stayed. Otro, the road remembers. The rain is falling again. Can you hear it? That soft percussion on pavement, on tin roofs, on the windshields of cars that pass in the night. The rain falls on Route 66, on what remains of it. The intact sections and the broken sections, and the sections that have been paved over or torn up or reclaimed by nature. The rain doesn't distinguish, doesn't care about preservation or history. It falls the same on everything, and maybe that's appropriate, because rain is about renewal, about washing away, about the cycle of death and rebirth that defines everything in this world, roads included. Route 66 isn't what it was, can never be what it was. The golden age is gone. The neon has dimmed. The traffic has moved to faster highways. The small towns along the route will never bustle the way they once did. But the road remembers. It remembers the Dust Bowl refugees, fleeing west with everything they owned loaded onto wheezing jalopies. Remembers their desperation and their hope. Remembers the children who didn't understand why they were leaving. Remembers the elderly who didn't survive the journey. It remembers the post-war prosperity, the families on vacation, the sense of possibility and freedom, the diners and motels and gas stations that thrived, the neon nights and the roadside attractions, and the feeling that America was endless and welcoming and full of promise. It remembers the decline, the opening of the interstates, the traffic disappearing, the businesses closing one by one, the people who stayed and the people who left, the ghost towns, the decay, the slow fade from relevance into nostalgia. All of it is still there somehow, imprinted on the pavement, absorbed into the landscape, carried in the memories of everyone who ever drove this road. Roads don't end, they fade into memory, and memory never sleeps. Memory is alive in Ruby, serving coffee before dawn, in Carl, driving the old route when he doesn't have to, in Walter, turning on the vacancy sign for guests who may not come. Memory is alive in the tourists who seek out Route 66, who want to experience what their grandparents experienced, who want to connect with something authentic, something real. Memory is alive in the historians and preservationists working to save what remains, restoring old motels, preserving neon signs, documenting the stories before they're lost forever, creating museums and interpretive centers, lobbying for historic designation and funding. Memory is alive in you, right now, listening to this, learning these stories, carrying them forward, because that's what roads really are. They're not just physical infrastructure, they're stories. They're connections between people and places and times. They're repositories of collective experience. They're witnesses to who we were, who we are, who we're becoming. Route 66 witnessed America in the 20th century, witnessed our dreams and our failures, our mobility and our rootlessness, our prosperity and our poverty, our willingness to build and our willingness to abandon what we've built in pursuit of something newer, faster, better. The road is a mirror, and what we see in it tells us as much about ourselves as it does about the road itself. The rain continues, steady now, gentle, washing over empty highways and occupied highways, over ghost towns and surviving towns, over abandoned motels and lovingly maintained motels, over rusted signs and restored signs. The rain connects everything, the past and the present, the living and the dead, the remembered and the forgotten. It falls on all of it equally, democratically, without judgment. And in that rain, if you listen closely, you can hear the whisper of the road, the stories it's telling, the memories it's preserving, the message it's sending to anyone who cares to receive it. The message is simple. You were here. You mattered. Your journey was important. Your story deserves to be told. Whether you were a Dust Bowl refugee or a 1950s family on vacation, whether you were a business owner or a customer, whether you stayed or left, whether you're remembered or forgotten, you were here. You were part of this. You mattered. The road remembers, will always remember, because that's what roads do. They carry us, yes, but more than that, they carry our stories, our ghosts, our dreams, our disappointments, our hopes. Route 66 is America's road, not because it was the biggest or the fastest or the most efficient, but because it was the most human, the most honest about who we are as a people. We build things, we abandon them. We remember them with nostalgia and regret. We preserve what we can, we let go of what we can't. We keep moving forward, always forward, because that's what Americans do. We're restless, we're searching, we're never quite satisfied with where we are. But sometimes, on a rainy night, Driving down a forgotten stretch of Route 66 through a nearly empty town, we remember. We remember what it felt like to believe in the road, to believe in the journey, to believe that somewhere ahead, around the next curve, over the next hill, something wonderful was waiting. And maybe it was, or maybe the wonder was in the journey itself, in the motion, in the miles scrolling past, in the people you met, in the places you stayed, in the small moments that added up to a life. The neon signs still glow in some places. The diners still serve coffee. The motels still offer rest. They're rarer now, harder to find. But they're there, waiting, welcoming, remembering. And the road still exists, in pieces, in fragments, sometimes well maintained, sometimes crumbling, sometimes barely recognizable as the mother road that carried so many dreams west. But it's there, and it remembers. It remembers every tire that rolled across its surface, every family that traveled its length, every business that thrived along its edges, every person who ever looked at a map and traced the diagonal line from Chicago to Los Angeles and thought, that's where I need to go. The rain is softer now, lighter, the kind of rain that will last for hours but never becomes a downpour, the kind that soaks in slowly, gently, nourishing everything it touches. This is the rain of memory, of recognition, of honoring what was and accepting what is. It falls on Route 66 and washes it clean, not of history, never of history, but of bitterness, of regret, of the sense that something was lost that can never be recovered, because nothing is truly lost, not while people remember, not while stories are told, not while someone, somewhere, makes the choice to drive the old road instead of the interstate, to stop at the diner that's been there for 70 years, to stay at the motel that refuses to close, to buy something at the trading post that's held on long past any reasonable expectation of survival. Every time someone makes that choice, Route 66 lives again. Not as it was, it can never be as it was, but as something new, something that honors the past while existing fully in the present. The road has become a pilgrimage site, a destination for people seeking something authentic in a world that often feels mass-produced and homogenized. They come from around the world, from Europe and Asia and Australia. They rent cars in Chicago or Los Angeles, and they drive. They drive the whole route, or sections of it. They stop at the surviving businesses, they photograph the ruins, they collect stories. They're looking for America, the real America. Not the one in shopping malls and chain restaurants, but the America of small towns and local businesses and people who remember when things were different. The America that existed before everything became the same everywhere, and they find it. Not everywhere, not in every town, but in enough places, in Ruby's Diner, in Walter's Motel, in the trading post where the owner's family has been selling turquoise for 3 generations, in the gas station that still has the original pumps from 1947. They find it in the landscape, in the desert sunsets, in the storms over the plains, in the way the light hits an abandoned building and makes it beautiful, in the endless horizon, in the sense of space and possibility that's uniquely American, and they find it in themselves, in the simple act of choosing the slower route, the less convenient route, the route that requires patience and attention and a willingness to be surprised, the route that rewards not efficiency but engagement. Route 66 teaches you to slow down, to look, to see, to be present. Because if you're rushing, if you're just trying to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, you'll miss everything that matters. You'll miss the widow's walk on top of the gas station in Dwight, Illinois. You'll miss the blue whale of Catoosa, Oklahoma. You'll miss the painted desert. You'll miss the conversation with the waitress who's worked at the same diner for 40 years. You'll miss the sunset over the Sandia Mountains. You'll miss the way the desert smells after rain. You'll miss the whole point. Because the point isn't the destination. The point is the journey, the miles, the experience, the accumulation of small moments that create something larger than themselves. The point is the road itself. And the road is always there, waiting, patient, ready to teach its lessons to anyone willing to learn. Lessons about time and change, about persistence and loss, about beauty in unexpected places, about the importance of small things, about what it means to be human. The rain is a whisper now. You have to listen carefully to hear it. Drops falling occasionally on the roof, on the pavement, on the windshield of a car passing in the night, its headlights cutting through the darkness, its taillights disappearing into the distance. Where's that car going? Who's inside it? What brought them to this road, this night, this particular stretch of Route 66? You'll never know. They're a mystery, a story you'll never hear, a life that intersects with yours for just a moment, in the same place, at the same time, and then diverges, heading in a different direction, toward a different future. But for that moment, you're connected, you and that unknown traveler, connected by the road, by the rain, by the shared experience of being in motion through the American night. And that connection, fleeting as it is, means something. It's part of what the road offers, a reminder that we're all traveling, all searching, all trying to get somewhere, even if we're not entirely sure where that somewhere is. Route 66 understood that, embraced it, said, "Come, all of you. Whatever you're looking for, whatever you're fleeing from, whatever dream or desperation drives you, come. The road is open. The road is waiting. The road will carry you." And it did. For millions, for generations. It carried them west, carried them toward hope, carried them through some of the hardest and best times of their lives, carried them home, even when home was a place they'd never been before. The road was a promise, a covenant, an agreement between America and its people. We will build this, it said, this connection, this possibility, and you can use it, you can trust it, you can stake your future on it. And people did. They believed in the road, believed in what it represented, believed in the idea that you could get in a car and go, that the road would be there, that somewhere ahead was a place where you belonged. That faith was rewarded for a while. The road delivered on its promise, connected the disconnected, created opportunities, built communities, made dreams possible. Then the world changed. Progress demanded faster highways. Efficiency replaced experience. The interstates were built, and they were better in many measurable ways, faster, safer, more direct. But they lost something too. They lost the human scale, the connection to place, the sense of journey as experience rather than just transportation. They lost the diners and the mom and pop motels and the roadside attractions and the small towns. They lost the soul. Route 66 kept its soul, even diminished, even bypassed, even fading. The soul remained, remains, will always remain. Because the soul of a road isn't in its traffic volume or its efficiency or its economic impact. The soul of a road is in the memories it carries, in the people who loved it, in the stories it tells to anyone who'll listen. And Route 66 has stories to tell. So many stories, more than could ever be told in one night, in one script, in one lifetime. Stories of struggle and triumph, of arrival and departure, of finding and losing, of hope sustained and hope dashed and hope renewed. These stories matter. They're part of who we are as a nation, part of our collective memory, part of what we pass down to the next generation, saying, this is where we came from. This is what we've been through. This is what shaped us. Remember it, honor it, learn from it, and maybe, if you can, preserve what's left. Support the businesses that survived, visit the towns that stayed, drive the old road, tell the stories, keep the memory alive. Because memory is all we have in the end. Memory is what survives when everything else fades. Memory is what connects us to the past and carries us into the future. Route 66 lives in memory now. That's its home. That's where it will always be, as vivid and real as it ever was, for anyone who takes the time to remember. The rain has stopped. Did you notice? Somewhere in the last few minutes, while we were talking, the rain ended. The clouds are breaking up. Stars are visible through the gaps. The moon is out, nearly full, casting silver light on wet pavement. The road glistens, reflects the sky, looks almost new in this light, almost like it could last forever. It won't, of course, nothing does. Eventually, the last piece of Route 66 will crumble, the last business will close, the last person who drove it in its prime will pass away. The road will become history, then legend, then myth. But that's okay. That's the way of things. Everything ends. Everything fades. Everything passes into memory. What matters is that it existed, that it mattered to people, that it changed lives, that it's remembered. Route 66 existed, did matter, changed millions of lives, and is remembered, lovingly, sadly, hopefully, with nostalgia and regret and gratitude and wonder, remembered by Ruby and Carl and Walter, by the tourists who seek it out, by the historians who document it, by the children who hear stories from grandparents about the old road west, and now remembered by you. You've traveled it tonight, in a way, followed it from Chicago to the desert, from the Dust Bowl to the neon nights, from the plains to the ghost towns, from the beginning to wherever we are now, which isn't quite the end, not yet. The road continues in fragments, in memory, in spirit. It continues, and somewhere, right now, someone is driving it, a stretch of old Route 66 in Illinois or Oklahoma or Arizona. They're in a car, windows down, warm air flowing through, or windows up, heater running, rain falling outside. They're alone or with family or with friends. They're young or old or somewhere in between. And they're experiencing what millions experienced before them. The road, the journey, the sense of motion through space and time, the feeling that they're part of something larger, something important, something that connects them to everyone who ever traveled this way. They might not be thinking about history, they might not know about the Dust Bowl or the post-war boom or the interstate system. They might just be driving, just getting from one place to another. But the road knows, the road remembers. And in some small way, the road is speaking to them, teaching them, connecting them to the past and the future and the eternal present of the journey itself. Because roads don't end. They fade into memory, and memory never sleeps. It keeps watch. In the dark hours, in the quiet moments, when rain falls on empty highways, when neon signs flicker, when someone, somewhere, remembers. The road remembers, always, forever. Listen, can you hear it? The hiss of tires on wet pavement, the soft percussion of rain on tin roofs, the whisper of wind across the plains, the sound of the road, the sound of memory, the sound of America. Route 66, the Mother Road. Still here, still speaking, still waiting for anyone who'll listen. Thanks for joining me tonight on this journey down Route 66. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking the video and subscribing to Americana Stories. There are so many more tales to tell about this country of ours, its mysteries, its history, its forgotten corners, and remembered dreams. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever driven Route 66? What's your favorite American road? What stories do you want to hear next? Until next time, safe travels. And remember, the road is always there, waiting to carry you wherever you need to go. Good night.